Well, hello friends, and welcome to Ask Zach. Today, I'm going to tell the story of how I ended up playing on the 50th anniversary American Music Awards television show on CBS. And the tale of how I got invited to do that by Brad Paisley. Of course, I played with him. And just the prep that I did beforehand and the experience of it, the kind of hurry up and wait of doing television. And I'll show a little bit of the parts. I'll talk a little bit about the gear that I used and all that stuff. So it'll be fun. So first off, I need to thank my Patreon members because they are really what keeps this channel going, and I really appreciate them. If you'd like to support the show, Patreon's the best way. Check out the link in the description. There's also tip jar information and merch, which I of course also appreciate. Let's dive in. So let's see, just a little short synopsis on my friendship with Brad Paisley. We've known each other for 30 plus years. We met in college. 20 years ago, I was his guitar tech for about a 2.5 year period. And, of course, since then we've been continued our friendship, and, we work on guitars together and do things like that. However, I don't really play with him very often. Now, when I was his guitar tech 20 years ago, I would sometimes play the Opry with them or sometimes an award show here and there. But since then, I don't normally do that. And it's not something that I ask or have any expectation. I went on a whole European tour, and, I had, it's Brad's show, and it's a great show. And, I'm not needed. I mean, he has a great band. However, they were doing his new single called Truck Still Works, and Brad called me up and he said, hey, there's a bunch of guitar parts on here, and between Gary and I, Gary Hooker, Brad's guitar player, we feel like there needs to be another guitar player to help fill things out. I said, okay. He said, we're going to do the American Music Awards, this 50th anniversary show. We're going to fly out to Los Angeles. Here's the tune, yada, yada, yada. So I, immediately, had to think about, learning the song and such. And also little side story, which I'm going to have to do a whole separate episode on this. But this is a late 80s Glaser Bender guitar that was put together from parts that were up in Joe Glaser's attic. And I'm going to tell the whole story on this later, but Brad Paisley was very involved in this and actually did all the finish work on this. And so part of this was that I had just gotten this guitar. We just got it finished, because of course it needed dots in the neck and, all sorts of things. And so Brad was also kind of excited because he thought it'd be fun for me to play this guitar on TV also. So there you have it. So, new guitar, let's have fun and let's go play on an award show. This is my world. So anyway, so getting back to prepping for doing the show. So the first thing I do is I start listening to the song over and over again, and I listen to it in different places. So, because depending on what type of speaker and the way things are, again, the way something sounds on your iPhone compared to the way things sound in a good stereo, like in your car or in your home versus headphones and things like that, it sounds different, and you kind of pick up different things. So I started really listening to the song. Then the best way I've found to learn a song is to make a chart of it, because when you make a chart, you have to really sit down and figure out, make sure that you know the chords and the form. So I made a little, simple Nashville number chart. And so then, you've got intro, verse, chorus, solo, bridge, chorus, and out. And I've got, the title of the song, the key, and then I've got little notes on where certain licks are, because of course, this is a Brad Paisley song, so I'm not going to be playing any solos, and but I'm going to be playing like some fills and things like that, and some unison lines with the pedal steel. So I made all these notes. Also, I saw that there was a lot of mandolin stuff. And so after I made the chart and listened to it a bunch, then I called Brad so that I can have an intelligent conversation, because now I know the format of the song. I know the different things that are going on that are not being covered by the band. I know all these, these extra parts. I'm kind of aware of them. So then it's like, okay, what do you want me to play? And he said, well, there's a baritone guitar part at the beginning of the song. And he said, you don't need a baritone because I start on a D note. So just lower your E string to D. And so this is the line that's at kind of the top of the song. He plays a lick on the telly, and then there's this baritone part that comes in. And that's it for a little bit. Then there are these little harmonic thing that come in. Then there's this mandolin stuff going on. And so in talking to Brad, he said, play the little baritone thing, cover some of the mandolin stuff, then play the licks with the steel guitar in the choruses. So then I knew exactly what to work on. So then, of course, I just showed you the baritone part. I showed you the little harmonic thing that kind of goes on in the intro of the song, where you have the harmonic thing over the G chord, you have the harmonic thing over the D chord. Then you have this mandolin part that comes in. And mandolin's tuned differently than a guitar. So it's tuned in fifths instead of fourths. So you end up with note stacks that you wouldn't normally play on the guitar necessarily. Again, it sounds good, but it's not, most of the time you don't think about covering a D chord doing something like this. But yet that's kind of the a very normal thing on the mandolin. Then going to the A chord, did this, and then going to the B minor. Let's see, and then back down to the G. So you end up with some very different kind of note stacks. But by playing that, it sounds like a mandolin. So even though you're playing a this Glaser Bender thing, it sounds much more like a mandolin when you play a mandolin-ish part. So then I guess the next thing that comes along is you have this lick that goes from the verse into the chorus. And it's kind of like there's this big kind of diamond, and then the guitar, so I play this lick, and then it goes, straight into the chorus. And then it's me kind of chunking some chords. And those lines that I were playing were, in unison, with the steel guitar player, with Randall Curry. Then kind of the next kind of interesting thing that comes along is there's a lick on the last chorus that again, that the fiddle, the steel, and I all play together. It's this. And that's, of course, fun to play. So, figured out, all those lines. One of the things I did that was real helpful was sometimes I'd play through my amp with like a little Bluetooth speaker and kind of play along with the recording. What was even better was I have this Mustang Micro thing that Fender was kind enough to give me a couple of years ago. And it's such a great learning tool, because it's really easy to use and it's small. And so you just plug your headphones in and you connect your phone via Bluetooth, and then you can just sit there quietly, learning the song, playing it over and over again, because my family was kind of getting tired of hearing Brad sing Truck Still Works over and over again while I learned the different parts. And frankly, I played it and practiced it until I didn't have to look at the guitar neck at all, and I would just stare, like at my bookshelves and things like that as I was playing the song, because I needed to know it so well that I could actually be interacting with the other guys in the band, or looking out at the audience and things like that. And, because the last thing you'd want to do when playing a TV show is have to look at a chart. Yeah. So, I mean, that's really unprofessional. So when you're doing TV, you've got to memorize the song, memorize your parts, and you've got to know them well enough that you're not staring at the neck of the guitar the whole time. So a little bit about, the experience of going and doing the show. So of course we flew from Nashville to LA. The runner takes us to the CBS studios there in Los Angeles, and we're checked in. We're given these, snazzy laminates, and then they have a handler with us. I don't know if you know what a handler is or not, but it's kind of like a hall monitor. And so they take you straight to your dressing room. So of course, they took Brad and his manager to a dressing room, and then in another part of the building, they took the band, which of course I was part of for that night. And so they take us to a dressing room, and then the handler sits in a chair right next to the door to the dressing room to basically keep an eye on us and make sure we don't wander around. And if we want to leave at all, we have to tell him where we're going. And he's either going to take us there, or, you have to be back in a certain amount of time. It was really interesting, because of course they're trying to keep, a TV show on schedule. And here's where I need to say this was pre-taped. So the show was not done live. So, if you saw it, it was on the other night. It was on Sunday night on CBS. Everything was pre-taped. So nothing was done live. So, but yeah, we're all, they're trying to keep everything on schedule because they're having to film all these different acts doing the songs. And of course, they're also pre-taping so that we can get a really good, a good version of the song down. So everyone, can do the song 2 or 3 times. Now, of course, you start doing more than that, then everyone's going to get, kind of like, hey, you should have your act together. But anywho, back to, sitting there in the dressing room, and it's kind of the thing of hurry up and wait. And you're just kind of waiting around, and, I've changed clothes, and so I had on this, black shirt and some black jeans and black pants. And part of that was because I was going to have this guitar, and I was like, okay, I've got enough color going on that I don't need to have something that clashes with it. So we're waiting, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, they want you up on the stage right now. And you go out there, and you plug in, and immediately they're wanting, they're kind of doing a line check, and so they're wanting you to play. So they make sure they have signal from you, and then they want you to play some more so they can make sure they've got everything dialed in, tone wise, volume wise, and such. And then we start going through the song. And so we go through the song, kind of once, where Brad's backstage and kind of fiddling around on the guitar, and he's listening to all of us. And then we run through the song 2 or 3 times with Brad up front. And of course, he also did the other parts that if you watched the show, then of course you saw the part where he talked about Charlie Pride and kind of introed the song. That was all kind of filmed all together. And we did the song, 2 or 3 times. They were happy, and then it was get the hell out of there. I mean, they were pushing us off the stage, and so I, grabbed my guitar, and I'll talk gear in a minute, but also, I couldn't grab my pedal board. So, but Brad's techs, they grabbed my pedal board. But anyway, they threw us off the stage. We ran to the dressing room. I changed clothes real quick because, we were having to go back to the airport, and we had to fly on to the next place we were going. And I barely had enough time to change clothes. And they were, they were running us out of the dressing rooms too. But anyway, we got out of there, and I went and got my pedal board from Brad's, techs, and we took off. And that was it. It was, it was one of those things where it was like an afternoon. It was probably 2 or 3 hours total. of sitting around and then all of a sudden hurry up and play and then get out of here. So, but it was a lot of fun. So let's talk a little bit about gear. So one of the things that Brad's people contacted me, his production manager contacted me and said, what kind of amp do you want? Because of course the show's gonna be backlined, except for Brad. Brad of course brought his own amps, but the rest of us, had to be backlined because they're having to pay freight and everything. So, it's fine for us to use backline and Brad have his, Dr. Z amps, which, that's part of his deal. And he's he's a big Dr. Z guy. And, but for me, I had to think about what I was going to use. And so they said, what do you want? And I thought about a deluxe reverb, but then I thought, well, I'm copying, Brad's parts, which were all done with Dr. Z's, or maybe, he could have used, one of a Rocket or all sorts of different things. So, or an old AC30. And to me, it sounded like Voxy, Dr. Z stuff. And I knew, the rental place wasn't going to have Dr. Z stuff. So I just said an AC30. So they had an AC30 for me. It was one of the British-made reissues, like from the early 2000s, and it had greenbacks, which normally I don't love the greenbacks, but as soon as I plugged into it, it sounded really big and fat and nice, and so it was great. Of course, I had to take this guitar. This is the Glazer Bender guitar that, like I said, it was made from parts that were up in the attic. And I'm going to do a whole episode about this guitar, so I'm not going to do a deep dive on this at this point. I will say that the pickups are all Seymour Duncan. This is the 53 tapped set, which has like a 6K output and it has a 9K output. And so I was using the 6K output, which is the switch in the up position. If I hit that down, it's 9K, and I didn't need that thick of a sound. This has of course, it has a Glazer Bender on it. It has the Glazer wiring thing. So I've got the push, the push pull that makes it where you can have the outside two pickups. This is a blend control, which I can blend in the middle strat, and I did blend in a little bit just to kind of soften things because this doesn't have a tone control anymore, of course. Normal volume control, 5-way switch, which does kind of like what you would think, except of course when you pull that you get the outside ones. Yeah, and then just had a lot of fun. This is a great sounding and fun guitar, and yeah. Then pedal board wise, I used my standard pedal board that I use when doing this show or doing live stuff, and I'll show a picture of that. And basically what I used on it was I used the Line 6 Echo Park for a longer delay time, and I used the Boss DM3 set to a slapback. So I used both of them, and I used the Sawdust, which is like a Mostortion type distortion, just to give me a little bit of grit, because I didn't want to be too clean, because Brad's stuff is gainier than what I do. And I wasn't going to try to rely completely on the Vox itself, because this doesn't have a master volume on it. So I wanted to try to get a little bit of a dirty sound without having to crank the amp up a lot, especially for television. And then I had the Mirage compressor on, and that was all I used. And of course, my pedal board has a True Tone CS6 power supply, and thanks to Bob at True Tone. And and that was kind of the rig. And I had a Dunlop volume pedal that that board has an insert on it. It has a breakout box that Exact Tone made, so that I can go so that I can put the volume pedal, so I can insert it after the gain pedals but before the delay pedals. Also, of course, that big board has it has the UA deluxe reverb, the Dream 65 pedal on there, and it has a Canvas DI on there. And I wasn't using either one of those for the show. That's just my backup. That's in case my amp blows up. So if something happened with the AC30, I guess we could have pulled another amp up, or we could have just gone direct. But yeah, so that was the gear. I did use heavier strings. I normally use the 9.5 D'Addario NYXLs, but I put 10s on because I wasn't really needing to do any, I didn't need to really solo. And then there was this baritone part at the beginning, and I wanted to make sure that when I played, it was as boingy as possible. And so, yeah, having a 46 versus a 44 when you're turning this down to D, it helped out a little bit. And again, that's something you can specifically do when you're going to do a show like that, and you know exactly what you're needed to do. But yeah, so I had this guitar, my pedal board, and the rental AC30, and yeah, it was just a ton of fun. Yeah, it was an honor to get to play on another award show, to get to play with Brad. It's fun to do a song, Truck Still Works, which harkens back to a song that Brad recorded when I was working with him, Mud on the Tires. It's kind of like a sequel to the song, and it has little fun elements. And you ought to check out the song Truck Still Works, because it's got these little elements. There's a few guitar licks here and there that are they're lifted from Mud on the Tires, but again, it's just kind of a nod and a wink and such to that song. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun to play with my friends. And all those guys in Brad's band I've known for 20 plus years, and they're great guys, and they're super pro, and it was just a lot of fun. All right, guys. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. And yes, there will be a deep dive on this Glazer Bender guitar, where I talk about the whole story of how this came together soon. All right, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.